Your name?
Sergeant Justin DeRosa.
And sir, where do you work?
Cape Coral Police Department.
How long have you worked there?
Almost 18 years.
And in what capacity?
I'm the sergeant of the K-9 unit.
And were you the sergeant of the K-9 unit back on the 10th of October of 2019?
I was.
Okay. What were your duties at that point in time?
That particular day, I was riding as a two-man unit with another officer because my vehicle was being serviced. So while I waited for that to be done, I was just driving around with a traffic officer.
About what time was that?
Late morning, early afternoon.
And while your car was being serviced, did you ask your partner to do anything in particular that afternoon?
Officer Wilson actually advised me he wanted to go check out a undeveloped kind of area in the North Cape. We were looking for the missing female Diane Lewis.
So you became involved in the investigation of the missing person, Ms. Ruiz?
Sorry, yes.
Was that in passing, or was that something that you were actively involved in?
That was in passing. I was not assigned to the case or anything like that.
So you had some spare time on your hands?
You could say that, yeah.
Okay. And you and Officer Wilson then said, hey, let's go check out this area?
Yes.
Okay. And where did you go?
So along Northwest 4th Place in that general area, but kind of north of Pine Island Road, there was a what would have been a development back during 2005, 2008, somewhere in then, and they had roads put in and a pond. And Officer Wilson was like, let's go drive that area and just check it out, because not a lot of people even know it's there. So we just met up over there, and while we drove over there, there was another traffic officer in the area, and we just started to drive the perimeter of the lake, which is kind of in the center of what the development would have been.
What prompted you to go to that particular location?
Just the general vicinity of where Ms. Ruiz was last seen. This would have been west of that location. Again, we knew that there was officers, detectives out looking for her, actively looking for her. And, we just said, well, let's try this area over here. Again, it was Officer Wilson's idea to really go check that area out. So give it, just go drive the area and see what we see.
So how many of you were there looking in that particular area at that time?
So me and Officer Wilson would have been in his vehicle, and then Officer Barkley was in his vehicle as well.
About how long had you been out there searching?
I would say, we were probably 15, 20 minutes maybe. It wasn't very long.
And then what happened?
So we're driving the perimeter of the lake and just, looking down in kind of the weeds and things of that nature. Saw a single vulture circling a wooded area to our east. And Officer Wilson and I both looked at each other and said, well, let's go over there and see what we find. It was kind of it was like an undeveloped lot with some trees on it, really, kind of a wooded lot area.
What did that single vulture indicate to you?
Well, vultures usually circle, carcasses, dead animals, dead bodies, whatever, so we thought that might be something to go investigate.
Okay. About how far away were you at that time when you saw that vulture to the body?
Maybe 2 blocks. It wasn't very far, 2, maybe 3 blocks.
Okay. So you see this vulture in the sky, it's circling. You then what, get back in your car and go where?
Well, Officer Wilson drove over up along Northwest 4th, and kind of, again, the lot was wooded. He pulled his, he had a F-150, so we pulled the truck up around into the empty lot, and as we kind of started to turn north in the northern direction there, is when we both recognized a body in the woods.
About how far off the road did you see the body?
We were off the road, so we had to kind of enter the lot and kind of make that turn before we really saw it. So 30 feet, 40 feet maybe. So
did you ultimately wind up getting out of your vehicle?
We did. Again, we didn't really get very close, but we began to tape the area off. I advised the detectives working the scene or the case. They were on another channel. Advised them what we had located. And again, we just started to make sure that the area was secure, put up crime scene tape, things like that. So
directing your attention to the image that we have portrayed up on the screen, states exhibit number 28. Does that fairly and accurately depict the area in which you found the body there at Northwest 4th Place?
Yeah, that would not be looking north. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would look east. Yeah, so right there on this lower part of the screen, that kind of loop, that's the undeveloped community that we were investigating when we saw the vulture. So, yeah, a couple blocks.
So after you went ahead and taped off that particular scene, what did you do next?
We just held the scene and waited for the detectives and other officers to arrive. And then later I returned because obviously they expanded the crime scene and did what they did. We have a mobile command vehicle, and I was just assigned to that for security of the vehicle, of the command vehicle.
And this was on October 10th, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
That's here in Lee County?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have no further questions for this witness.
Mr. Hollander?
No cross, Judge.
All right. So you can sit down.
Judge, at this time, I respectfully request.
Take a stand. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Please introduce yourself to ladies and gentlemen of the jury by telling them your name.
My name is Jacqueline Fordham, Director of the Forensics and the Evidence Units.
And what type of training experience allows you to do the job that you do?
I have a bachelor's in science degree from Florida Gulf Coast University in criminal justice studies. In 2007, I was hired on by the Cape Coral Police Department as a forensic technician, which is basically your entry-level crime scene investigator. I was later promoted to forensic specialist, and then in May of 2021, took on the supervisory role.
So back in October of 2019, what was your role at that point in time?
Forensic specialist.
And did you become involved in the investigation of a missing person by the name of Christine Melton?
I did.
Did you also become involved in the investigation of a missing person also known as Diane Lewis?
Yes.
All right. Let's talk about the investigation that you conducted as it related to Miss Christine Melton. Were you involved with the processing of a black Nissan Versa that was attributed to Miss Christine Melton?
Yes, I was.
Now, I'd like to direct your attention to the screen. I'm showing you what's been previously admitted as State's Exhibit number 5. Is that the black Nissan Versa that you were involved in processing?
Yes.
Could you please describe for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what is involved in processing a vehicle?
For this specific case, the vehicle was towed into our secure evidence storage area. Once the search warrant was served, we photographed the outside of the vehicle, notate anything that stands out to our eye, such as damage or blood, any type of shrubbery, or anything that seems a little bit off or unique to the vehicle. We do a 360 view photography of it. Once that is done, if any additional processing needs to take place on the exterior of the vehicle, that is done as well. That can include collection of paint scrapings or blood or just additional photographs if needed. We then make entry into the vehicle and do the same thing inside the vehicle. So 360, several views of all of the areas of the inside of the vehicle to include the items that are inside of it as well. We then start to document any specific evidence that we need to collect.
So directing your attention here then to what's been previously admitted as 65A, that would be the back of the black Nissan Versa.
Yes.
And then 5B, that is the driver's side of the black Nissan Versa.
That's correct.
I note that the driver's side door, or at least the window anyways, has plastic wrapped around it. Are you aware of how that came about?
I am.
And how is that?
I was informed that a officer made entry to the vehicle by breaking out that window.
Would that be consistent with State's Exhibit number 5C, which reflects all the broken glass on the driver's side door as well as the floorboard?
It would.
Also inside that vehicle in State's Exhibit number 5D, we have a series of name tags. Now, were those found where in the vehicle?
I believe they were in the center console armrest area.
And then those items would have been placed on the passenger seat in order to photograph them. Is that fair?
Yes, that's one of the seats.
I'd like to direct your attention specifically what's been admitted as 5E. What's the significance of this particular photograph to you?
That is the glove compartment that is located on the passenger side of the vehicle.
And then, was there anything that was located within that glove compartment?
Yes.
Of any note?
Yes.
What was that?
A cell phone?
Would that be one of the same cell phone that's reflected here at 5G?
Yes.
I'd also direct your attention here to what's been admitted as 5F. What are we looking at in that particular photograph?
This is a photograph of the passenger side of the vehicle from the driver's side perspective. On the right-hand side of the photo, you'll see the backrest of the seat, the plastic piece that goes along the door, as well as the seat belt of the passenger side of that Versa.
And I note that if one looks closely at this particular photograph, there appears to be some discoloration here on the plastic, as well as some here on the seatbelt.
That is correct. There is staining there, as well as if you're sitting in the passenger seat, the right-hand side of that, you can kind of see that area of discoloration on the seat itself as well.
When you noted that discoloration, what did you do with that particular discoloration?
It was tested using a chemical called phenolphthalein, which is a presumptive test for blood. All areas that were just pointed out tested positive for blood.
Did you also search the rest of that vehicle?
Yes.
Okay. And did you find anything else of any note underneath the driver's side, or excuse me, the driver's seat?
Yes.
What did you see there?
An additional cell phone.
Would that be what's reflected here in State's Exhibit number 5I?
Yes.
And obviously, the back, which is reflected here in 5J.
That is correct.
Did you also find Florida vehicle registration within that vehicle?
Yes.
Did you photograph that?
I did.
Judge, let the record reflect. I'm showing defense counsel's increasing mark at State's Exhibit number 5K. Richard, vote.
Yeah.
I'm handing you some increasing mark to State's Exhibit number 5K. Ask you what that. Do you recognize that?
I do.
And what does that appear to be?
It is the photograph of the vehicle registration that I took for the Nissan Versa.
And does that fairly and accurately depict the Florida vehicle registration that you recovered from that black Nissan Versa at the time that you processed it?
Yes, it does.
Judge, at this time, State moves State's Exhibit number 5K in evidence.
No objection. Be admitted.
Permission to publish?
Be admitted.
Okay. How long did it take for you to process that vehicle?
It was processed over the course of 2 days, beginning on October 7th and ending on October 9th.
Were you also involved in attending the autopsy of Miss Christine Melton?
I was.
And what was the purpose for you to attend the autopsy?
To photograph the decedent and also collect any evidence collected during the autopsy.
And did you collect any items as related to the autopsy?
I did.
Specifically, did you collect a DNA bloodstain card?
Yes.
Judge, let the record reflect on showing defense counsel previously marked case exhibit number 15. Commissioner Crouch?
You may.
Report among pending previously marked case exhibit number 15. Ask you to take a look at that. I recognize that.
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize that?
It is the sealed envelope of the bloodstain card of Christine Melton that was collected by the medical examiner's personnel and then turned over to me. It is sealed with my initials, 4-digit, and the date of collection.
And is that item substantially same or similar condition as to when you last saw it?
Yes, with addition of the FDLE lab documentation.
When we say the FDLE lab documentation, you're referring to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
Yes.
And the reason why the Florida Department of Law Enforcement seal would have been on that is because of the fact that you sent it off for forensic testing?
That's correct.
I'd like to direct your attention to October 10th. Did you have an opportunity to become involved in the investigation of Ms. Diane Lewis when they located her body there at Northwest 4th Avenue?
Yes.
Could you please describe for ladies and gentlemen of the jury how your involvement came about on that particular day?
I was on duty at the time at the Cape Coral Police Department as a forensic specialist. We were advised by our law enforcement partners that an unidentified body had been located and that they requested crime scene to respond to it.
Did you?
Yes.
And how did you go about doing that?
We had several forensic vehicles respond to include our major crime scene vehicles. Myself, my supervisor at the time, and an additional technician responded out.
Were you lead in this particular case on that particular day?
I was not.
Okay. Who was the lead?
Forensic technician Casey Buckner-Brager.
And you were one of the individuals who was assisting and observed and essentially kind of almost supervised in a sense?
Correct. I assisted forensic tech Buckner-Brager in her examination of the scene.
So when you get to this particular location, and I'd like to direct your attention specifically to the screen there, case exhibit number 28. Case exhibit number 28 is an aerial photograph of where Ms. Ruiz was found and a series of tire tracks. Is that correct?
Yes.
And when you arrived at that location, could you please tell us where it was that you essentially set your crime scene vans up and began your investigation?
So we had a vehicle stationed at the house, if you're looking at that photograph, to the left, and then our major crime scene van was to the right. We're leaving that main scene in the center. We began processing the scene by just the same way we do a vehicle, taking overall photographs of the area from all directions, including any evidence or potential evidence that we may find leading up to the actual site, and then we walk into the site and begin to take additional photographs.
And did you do that in this particular case?
I did not do that. Forensic technician Casey Buckner-Brager is the one who photographed the scene.
Did you have an opportunity to observe and review all of the photographs that were taken in this particular case?
Yes.
Do those photographs fairly and accurately depict what you recall her doing and seeing on that particular day?
Yes.
Judge, let the record reflect on showing defense counsel's previously marked cases number 29, 29A, 29B, and then 29C. Commissioner Process?
You may.
Word I'm handing was previously marked cases number 29, 29A, 29B, and 29C. As you take a look at them. You recognize those?
Yes, I do.
And what are those?
They are photographs of the scene located on the photograph that is on the screen.
And do those photographs fairly and accurately depict the scene that you observed on October 10th of 2019?
Yes, I do.
And those photographs are one and the same that Ms. Buckner-Brager took on that scene that you had an opportunity to review?
Yes.
Judge, State would move cases number 29, 29A, 29B, and 29C in evidence at this time.
No objection.
To be admitted.
Commissioner Approach?
You may.
Commissioner Polish?
You may.
Hearing was previously admitted as case number 29. Ms. Forden, what are we looking at in this photograph?
This is the scene specific for where Ms. Ruiz was found. If you're coming from that main street, this is into that field a little bit and to the left. It's where two bushes kind of merge together. Towards the right-hand side of the screen, you will see an image of the body that was located.
Was this body noticeable from the street?
No.
So it appeared to have been tucked away?
Yes.
And the only way you would have been able to observe this body is how?
You would have had to walk into that field and directly look at that bush.
So what we're looking at in 29A, what are we looking at there?
This is an additional picture of that scene, a little bit closer in and slightly to the left angle. The body is now located on the left-hand side of the screen.
29B?
Again, walking a little bit closer to the scene, the body is visible top center of the photograph, and underneath or closer to the bottom of the screen, you'll see one black shoe.
And lastly, 29C.
This is a photograph right next to the body that was located in the position that she was located in.
Was she missing a shoe?
She was.
Was Ms. Ruiz immediately recognizable?
No.
Why not?
She was in a advanced stage of decomposition.
What do you mean?
If you look towards the center of the body, the belly area is bloated, showing the gases of the body starting to get larger and larger, which will expand the body itself. Her hands were very deteriorated. The skin was already starting to slip off, and her face was not recognizable. There was a very large amount of bug activity located all over her body as well.
When Ms. Ruiz was discovered and recovered, was the medical examiner's office ultimately notified?
Yes.
Did they arrive on scene?
Yes.
And did they ultimately have Ms. Ruiz removed from the scene?
Yes.
Did you touch the body at all while it was out in the state of decomposition out near the shrubs?
Sorry. No.
What did you do after you photographed Ms. Ruiz in this state?
The medical examiner responded and took custody of the decedent. The area was searched once the body had been removed and additional photographs were taken, and then the scene was cleared once our investigation was complete.
Now, did you ultimately wind up attending the autopsy of Mrs. Ruiz as well?
Yes.
Obviously, same purpose that you attended Ms. Melton's autopsy?
Yes.
And when you attended Ms. Ruiz's autopsy, did you also collect bloodstain cards?
I did.
And I'd also direct your attention to when you processed that vehicle, did you also collect and take a blood sample swab of that vehicle as well?
Yes, multiple swabs were collected.
Judge, let the record reflect on defense counsel from previously marked states number 32 and 33.
Which one is that? That's 30. Thank you.
Commissioner Coach?
You may.
Order, I'm handing you some previously marked states number 32 and 33. Ask you to take a look at those items. Recognize those?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize those?
They are the sealed bloodstain cards collected from the autopsy of Ms. Ruiz, as well as the sealed swabs collected from the passenger door of the Versa.
Now, the bloodstain card, is that state's exhibit number 32?
Yes, sir.
Is that substantially the same or similar condition as to when you last saw it?
Correct, with the addition of the FDLE lab stickers.
Okay, and once again, that would indicate that the Florida Department of Law Enforcement had reviewed this particular item?
Yes, sir.
And you asked that it be forensically examined?
Correct.
And state's exhibit number 33 is what?
The blood sample swabs from the passenger interior door of the Nissan Versa.
And is that item in substantially the same or similar condition as to when you last saw it?
Yes, with the addition of the FDLE documentation.
And lastly, that's due to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement having reviewed that particular item?
Correct.
And that you having sent it off to Florida Department of Law Enforcement to have it forensically examined?
Yes.
I have no further questions for this witness at this time, Judge.
Any questions?
Did you yourself or someone under your direction, were there any pictures of tread marks, tire marks, anything?
There were photographs of the tire impressions in the grass leading up to where Ms. Ruiz was located. The grass was somewhat tall, it wasn't cut, and so actual impressions that would be able to be cast would not be possible, given that there's impressions mean like sand, so you can actually get an impression this is grass. So it would just be a visual kind of line that you'd be able to observe.
Did you take any swabs from the exterior of the vehicle?
Yes, there were multiple swabs collected from the bumper area of the vehicle.
And what happened to those swabs?
I'm not sure if they were ever tested, but they were collected during the search warrant.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else?
No questions, Judge. Thank you.
All right. You can sit. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury by telling them your name.
Sure, how you doing? I'm Dr. Thomas Coyne, C-O-Y-N-E.
Dr. Coyne, what do you do for a living?
I am a medical examiner. I'm the current chief medical examiner in District 2, Tallahassee.
I'd like to direct your attention to October of 2019.
Sure.
Where were you working at that time?
I was the deputy chief medical examiner here at District 21.
Would you please describe your training and educational background for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that allows you to do the work that it is that you do?
Sure. I started out first with medical school. I completed my MD at Robert Wood Johnson Medical School at Rutgers University. At that same time, I also completed a PhD in toxicology and pharmacology. I then went on for a general residency in pathology or anatomic pathology at the Hospital University of Pennsylvania. At that same time, I completed a fellowship training or subspecialty training in neuropathology. After that, I went to the Miami-Dade Medical Examiner's Office for training in forensic pathology. So right now, I'm board certified in anatomic pathology, neuropathology, and forensic pathology.
All right. It's a lot of pathologies. Could you please describe for us what pathology is?
Sure, it's a branch of medicine, as internal medicine and sort of general medicine. Pathologists work behind the scenes. We have the same training as other physicians, but our job really is to determine or identify disease in tissues or in a deceased person. And we use our knowledge as a physician as well as other tools such as the autopsy procedure. We use our microscope to do histology to look at the tissues themselves and other tests like microbiology testing or genetic testing. And together we put all that information together with other physicians, hopefully to either identify your disease if you were in a hospital, or in my case as a forensic pathologist, to determine cause and manner of death.
You just anticipated my next question. What exactly is forensic pathology?
Sure. Forensic pathology takes all the tools that you learn as a pathologist, and we also study how injuries occur, so mechanisms of injury, how force creates injury, whether it's a blunt force or a sharp type force. We also learn about gunshot injuries, environmental injuries like fire and chemical injury. We have training in toxicology. We learn about the process of decomposition, and we use all of that again to figure out how a person dies.
Brings me to my next question. Anatomical pathology is what?
That's just general pathology.
And when we're talking about neuropathology, what are we referring to?
That's specifically pathology of the brain.
How long would you say that you've been a doctor?
11 years now. Well, since 2009 a doctor, but training as a forensic pathologist for 11 years. They go by so fast.
How many years have you been in medical examiner?
11 years.
All right. So in that time, can you tell us approximately how many autopsies that you've gone ahead and performed?
Ooh, it's approaching 4,000 now.
Now, back in October of 2019, you indicated that you were the Deputy Chief Medical Examiner here in Lee County. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, at that time, did you have an opportunity to perform an autopsy of Miss Diane Lewis?
I did.
In general, could you please describe for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury the purpose of conducting an autopsy?
Sure. An autopsy ultimately is to determine the cause and manner of death. But an autopsy is a procedure in which I examine a deceased person initially, much like I would a person who walks into an office to see your physician. You start with examining the person externally, making note of normal body features, their body habits, and then begin working to see if there are any unusual features like congenital defects or injuries. You catalog everything you see externally, and then you work internally, examining all the internal body cavities to, again, look for normal features as well as any signs of disease or injury. You add to that any microscopy or histology, looking at their tissues under the microscope. You sample their bodily fluids or tissues to do toxicology testing. And then you take all that data together and you hopefully arrive at a cause and manner of death.
Would you please describe for ladies and gentlemen the difference between cause and manner of death?
Sure. Cause of death is what actually led you to die on that particular day. So, for instance, let's say if you had heart disease and you had a heart attack. Well, physicians, we call that a myocardial infarction. So our cause of death would be myocardial infarction due to coronary artery disease, and that's your cause of death. And in that case, your manner of death would be natural. Whereas, let's say if you died in a car accident and you had head trauma, and perhaps maybe your cause of death is traumatic brain injury due to a motor vehicle accident, then your manner of death would be accident. In Florida, we have 5 manners of death. There's natural, accident, suicide, homicide, and lastly, undetermined.
All right. Now, let me draw your attention then to the autopsy of Miss Diane Ruiz. Did you perform that on the 11th of October of 2019?
Yes.
Would you please describe for ladies and gentlemen of the jury how you began the autopsy of Miss Diane Ruiz?
Sure. The body was transported to our office under homicide protocol, so it was in a body bag that was sealed with a lock. So the first thing we did was unseal that lock, open the body bag, and begin examining the body in its natural state. That is, wearing clothing, sort of slowly documenting the clothing the person was wearing, removing the clothing from that person, placing that aside for additional photography, and then moving in towards examining the body.
What injuries did you note, if any, on the external examination of Miss Diane Ruiz?
Sure. Most notably, so she was in the stages of putrefactive decomposition. So her tissues were being decomposed and degrading. She had some evidence of animal or scavenging activity on her body as well. And so portions of her ears and nose were removed already, most likely by avian scavengers. But I could see externally, first and foremost, that she had fracturing of the nasal bone. She also had a laceration underneath her left breast. She also had bruising or hemorrhaging in the skin on both sides of the left and right sides of the body.
Was that the extent of the external injuries that you observed?
The most significant external. There was, of course, a lot of significant internal injuries.
And did you document all these by way of
I apologize. She also had, what I didn't talk about was bruising on the back of her left forearm, bruising on the back of her left hand. I can also see that she had a fracture of the fourth finger, the proximal part of the fourth finger, and she also had some bruising on her right arm as well.
After you noted these external injuries, did you ultimately document those particular injuries
Yes.
by way of a photograph?
I did, yeah.
Now, before we get into the internal examination, did you also document the internal examination by and through photography?
Yes.
So, if I may approach defense counsel, Judge. Mark states number 30, 30A, 30B, 30C, 30E, 30G, and 30H.
You may.
Judge, can we approach?
You can. Actually, it might be a good time to just take a quick break. I'll send you all back to the jury room.
At the point, I'm handing you the briefs and marked stakes number 30, 30A, 30B, 30C, 30E, 30F, 30G, and 30H.
Okay.
And so you take a look at those items, see if you recognize those?
I do. So these are all photographs that were taken on the day of the autopsy in the morgue here in Fort Myers.
And do those photographs fairly accurately depict the autopsy conducted upon Ms. Diane Lewis when you conducted it back on that day?
Yes, I do.
Judge, state all those items in evidence at this time.
Very well. And your previous objection is noted. Other than that, any other objections?
On this list, there was an F. I don't recall an F on the initial.
I'll let you take a look.
You have 30B and 30. That's already been previously.
Right, but you just said.
I'll let you all walk over and show them what you're. Okay. All right. Other than that previous objection, which is still noted, any other objection?
No.
All right. They'll be admitted.
No additional objections.
Yes, I understand.
Permission to process?
You may. You may.
Dr. Coyne, I'd like to direct your attention to the screen. What are we looking at in this photograph?
This is a photograph of the face of the decedent taken on the autopsy table. You can see here.
Do we have that identified? Which exhibit that is?
It's 30.
Yeah, because we can't see the exhibit sticker on them. Thank you.
And the picture shows the exposed nasal bone, which you can see is fractured.
And we look at State's Exhibit number 30A.
Sure, this is a view of the body again, lying supine on the autopsy table. This gives a view of the neck and torso. And here you can see under the left breast there is a horizontal laceration.
In 30B, what are we looking at in this photograph?
This is a more closer view of that same laceration under the left breast.
Now, doctor, when we're looking at the photographs, when a body's in a state of decomposition, what is the body doing at that point in time?
Sure. So all of our body is covered with bacteria and lined with bacteria. And so when you die, the ability of your immune system to protect you against those bacteria stops. And so that bacteria basically multiply and travel throughout your body, literally consuming your tissues. And so that is the process of putrefaction that we are seeing here. At the same time, too, because you are deceased, the enzymes in your body, as they're being released from your cells, will also aid or add to that process.
And is there also a series of bloating that occurs as well?
Yes.
And how does that happen?
That happens because the bacteria that are present within our gut that travel throughout our body are anaerobic bacteria, so they will produce gases like methane and hydrogen sulfide during the process of putrefaction.
Now, directing your attention back to the screen here, 30C. What are we looking at in this particular photo?
So this is a photograph now of the decedent on her stomach, and you're looking at her back and the back of her head. Her arms are up in the air, so her right arm is present, and although you see discoloration, within that area of discoloration is actual bruising or contusions of the back of the right arm as well as on the right forearm. She has bruising or contusions on the bilateral upper back regions or the trapezius muscles, which are in that area. You can see on the left side there's some red-purple discoloration, which is also contusions.
And would you please step down, if you would be so kind, as to point exactly what it is that you're talking about with regards to the various contusions?
You have to speak up loud because there's not a microphone there.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, here is the right arm, and here is drying or desiccation of the skin. But you can see here, there's this red-purple discoloration, which is the hemorrhage or bruising. And she also has that mixed within this area of drying here in her forearm. You can also see here now, looking at the back, this area right here and here, which is that same contusions or hemorrhage. Because when you reflect the skin, when you're doing the internal examination, you can actually see the hemorrhage within the fat tissue underneath the skin, letting you know that it's real hemorrhage and not just artifact of decomposition.
Now, on this particular photograph, closer to the left-hand side in the upper left, we note that there's an extremely darker discoloration. Is that discoloration that relates to a tattoo, or is that related to actual hemorrhage into the body?
This area right here is a tattoo.
And what's been previously admitted as State's Exhibit number 30D, would that be an up-close photograph of that particular tattoo?
Yes, it is.
Now, doctor, before you go anywhere, you indicated that you conducted the internal examination of Ms. Diana Ruiz.
Yes, it is.
What did you find as it relates to any type of internal injuries to Diana Ruiz?
Sure. So the internal examination in this case, involved reflecting the skin of the neck as well as the skin of the chest and the abdomen. In particular, we were able to see that there was hemorrhage on the right side of the neck within the fat tissue as well as the large muscle here on the right side of her neck called the sternocleidomaxillary muscle. In addition, we have a bone in our neck, a free-floating bone called the hyoid bone. It's a C-shaped bone. The left side of that bone was fractured. That bone sits just above our thyroid cartilage, so in men, we have the Adam's apple more prominent than in females, but you also have the same thyroid cartilage. The top of that thyroid cartilage has two horns, and those horns sit right below that hyoid bone in her neck. These two horns were fractured. As well, she had a large number of rib fractures, and so she had fractures to the 1st through 11th ribs of both the lateral and posterior aspects of the torso. She also had some anterior rib fractures. This photo here is a picture of the neck. You can imagine the head is here.
Hold on one second. What exhibit is that?
That would be State's Exhibit number 30D, Your Honor.
Thank you.
It says F.
F, 30F. 30. My apologies, 30F.
You can see this is, if I make a Y incision on the body here, I'm going to do it on my torso, and I reflect the skin backwards, as we're seeing here. And this is the neck. You can see that hemorrhage I was referring to in the soft tissue or fat tissue, as well as within the muscle.
How much pressure, or what would it take to cause that kind of damage?
I'd say probably far greater than 10 to 15 pounds of pressure, because you have also a corresponding fracture of the hyoid bone and the tracheal cartilage.
You indicated the hyoid bone as well as the...
Here is the thyroid cartilage, and I don't know if you want to show the figure number, but
That's going to be State's Exhibit number 30G, Your Honor.
if we all feel that on the front of our neck right here, that ridge. So this is the front, this is the back, and these two horns are fractured. And here's our trachea right here, our area. That's the hyoid bone, which sits right above this, and you can see some hemorrhage on the left side of the hyoid bone, which shows it's fractured. You can see the hemorrhaging there, hemorrhaging there. And there's the fracture right there.
You made mention in State's Exhibit number 30E that I'm showing you here, that you noted that there were several rib fractures.
So this is now a picture after the skin of the body has been reflected. We've removed all the internal organs, and now you're looking, here's the spine, and here are the posterior aspects of the ribs. This hemorrhage here on both sides corresponds to all of the rib fractures. And you can see these little gaps here. These are the actual fractures on both sides, and there are fractures in rib numbers 1 through 11 on both sides.
Now, as we're looking at State's Exhibit number 30E, you indicated that there are multiple rib fractures. Is that on just one side, or is it front and back?
So on the back, there are 1 through 11, and then if you can imagine, the ribs kind of curve around. The lateral aspects also have similar fractures, which are not as well visualized here. You can see some of those fractures in here.
So essentially, when we're referring to multiple fractures, we're essentially looking at two sets of fractures on one side and two sets of fractures on the other side. Is that fair?
That's right.
What kind of force would cause multiple fractures such as those?
A significant compressive type force, because if you imagine, the body's laying on the ground and my hands are the ribs, because of the top of the ribs and the bottom ribs. You have fractures in the top, lateral aspects, and the bottom. So it's more or less a compressive force that caused all those fractures together. So a significant weight bearing down, or force bearing down upon the body.
You'd like to take a stand again, Doug? So would you say that, I don't know, an automobile driving over a body could cause that kind of...
That would certainly cause that, yeah.
I'm going to also show you 30H.
That's,
Is that-
yeah, it's a photo of a ring that we obtained during the autopsy, removed from the body, the autopsy.
And that's one that was taken, 30I, that was also previously admitted?
That's correct, yep, also removed.
Now, doctor, when we're talking about damage to the thyroid cartilage as well as to the tracheal aspect of the throat, could you tell us approximately what it is that would cause that kind of damage?
Those are the types of injuries we classically see in strangulation, where a person will place pressure across another person's neck, whether it is using a ligature or even using a hand by grasping the neck very firmly and squeezing down upon those structures.
And does it take a tremendous amount of force in order to cause fractures to those particular items?
The fractures, yes.
Now, the hemorrhaging that you saw in the neck area underneath, how much damage or pressure would you say would cause that?
For the type of bleeding you see there, less pressure than it takes to fracture a bone. But the real issue is the pressure it requires to compress the carotid arteries, because ultimately what happens is those carotid arteries that course down the side of our neck takes about 10 pounds of pressure really to compress those. And so if you compress those, you can also, with that same amount of pressure, you're also tearing apart those fine capillaries and small vessels which are in the muscle around those main arteries. So that's causing the hemorrhage you see in there, but it's also compressing those carotids, preventing blood flow to our brain.
Now, given the various contusions and bruising that you saw around the body in your external examination, would those have been consistent with, say, someone who was actively trying to defend themselves?
Certainly the ones, on the arms would be in the distribution that would suggest that, on the backs of the hand and the forearms, which are classically where we say possibly in a defensive type region, where you're trying to parry a blow or protect yourself.
Now, when we're talking about strangulation and someone is attempting to strangle an individual, how long would it take for someone to ultimately wind up dying as a result of that?
It doesn't take much to cause a person to pass out. Probably 15 to 20 seconds of a hold around the neck, as you can imagine from people that have a sleeper hold, or you've seen it in videos or movies, and that's real. In other words, it's the lack of blood flow to the head. The real issue is if you maintain that. If you release pressure at that point in time, a person will return or regain consciousness. If you hold that pressure there for a greater period of time, probably beyond 30 seconds, you may not actually have a return to consciousness because the lack of blood flow to the brain was persistent, and that's really the issue. And in her case too, the question I have, obviously you have these injuries, and then you have the other injuries, the compressive injuries. You have hemorrhage in the back of the neck on the spinous processes, or as you can feel here, the big prominent one back here is called C7. There is C5, C6, and C4. All those vertebrae, or the bones of her spine, have hemorrhage around them. The other thing is there was actual hemorrhage around the membrane between the first and the second cervical vertebrae. And so what that tells me is that there was a significant force that went through that region while she was alive, because had she not been alive, I wouldn't have seen hemorrhage in those regions. And why that's notable for me is because that part of your spinal cord, as it goes upwards into our brainstem, is responsible for our ability to breathe. So we're sitting here breathing in, breathing out, not thinking about it. That part of our brain controls that involuntary activity. And so if a significant force is pushed through that region, you could also cause a person to stop breathing or die as well. So you have those two injuries occurring most likely while she was alive, therefore creating injuries that have hemorrhage.
So in other words, she would have been aware of the fact that she was in the process of dying at that time.
She very well could have been, yes.
Could she have also been aware of the fact that she could have been strangled, could have come and still been breathing, and ultimately then sustained the blunt force trauma that she sustained to her ribcage?
That's quite possible, yes.
You don't know the order in which those injuries happened, do you, doctor?
I do not.
Okay. So can one have those multiple rib fractures and then ultimately be strangled, or vice versa?
Yes.
Could Diana Ruiz have survived these?
Given the severity of the injuries to the neck, I would say no.
And doctor, did you also fill out a death certificate in this particular case?
I did.
You may.
I do. This is a Florida State certificate of death.
And is that a certified copy?
Yes, it is.
Is that at this time, Judge, the state would move Stacey Zimmer 31 in evidence?
Any objection?
No.
Be admitted.
Now, doctor, at the time that you were at the District 21 Medical Examiner's office back in October of 2019 as a deputy chief, did you also supervise the autopsy of a Miss Christine Melton?
I was involved in that, yes.
Could you please describe for us what your involvement was as it relates to that particular case?
Sure. At that time, I was the deputy chief medical examiner, and so it was very common for me to interact with all the associate medical examiners at the office at the time. They were all younger than me, a little less experienced, and so I would very often talk with them daily about their cases. I would always go into the back in the morgue to see what cases were there that day, to see if the associate medical examiners had any questions, just to discuss their plan of attack, if you will, how they would approach a case. So that was something I did on this day with Dr. Hernandez, who was the primary doctor on the case.
Did you also have active involvement in the examination of Miss Christine Melton?
Yes, I did observe all those injuries. Yep.
Okay. And what, if anything, did you note were of any concern to you?
Sure. I mean, well, certainly, just looking externally, you can see that she had a large number of bruises on her body, on her face, swollen eye, contusions around the eye, contusions around the mouth. She had bruising all over her torso, all over her arms. So it was suggested that she had blunt trauma. And being a young person, you always wonder whether or not that could be, the cause of a person's death. And so similar to the injuries we described here, when Noelle did the internal examination, you can see that there was a significant amount of hemorrhaging on both sides of the neck, within both, skeletal muscles of the neck. She also had bruising in her scalp, all over her scalp, as well as within the subscalp muscles. So again, showing significant blunt force trauma. Also, if I can continue, what was notable about this case was when she did the internal examination, she also saw that there was contusions of her internal organs as well. So forces that were directed to the outside of the body also went inward. And so she had bruising or contusions of the lungs. She had a contusion of the liver. She also had contusions in the back of her bladder, as well as contusions to her colon, indicating that there was a significant force to the abdomen as well.
Now, as a result of having observed the external as well as the internal examination of Ms. Melton, did you also conduct an examination of her brain?
I did, yes.
And what did that examination reveal to you?
Sure. I mean, it was a structurally normal brain, so there wasn't anything congenitally wrong, any brain masses or anything that would cause a person to die. But the interesting thing that I did see was the brain was swollen, or edematous, and that to me fits with the injuries you observe on her scalp and around her head. It suggests that there was an underlying concussive trauma because a brain can swell if a person is deprived of oxygen. It needs time to have that process to occur. So if a person, let's say, you cut off oxygen or blood flow to a person's brain, and then you let them recover, that brain will swell. But if a person dies from injuries, and in this case, more than likely, she was asphyxiated from strangulation, she would have died not allowing the brain to swell because of that process. And so it suggests to me that that swelling occurred prior to that, probably from concussive trauma to her head.
And did you ultimately concur with the doctor as it relates to her finding that Ms. Melton died as a result of asphyxiation?
Yes.
No further questions, please.
Just a couple of questions up here.
Yes.
Doctor, let's go back to Ms. Louise. I'm a little bit confused here. You can't tell me with any degree of scientific certainty as to what order these injuries occurred, is that correct?
That's correct.
So it's entirely possible that she was unconscious from the strangulation at the time she incurred the injury to her neck and the ribs were broken.
It's possible.
Now, the injury to the neck, were vertebrae actually cracked or broken?
No, you just had hemorrhage around there, which
Okay. So there was pressure around that area?
a force, that had gone through there. Yeah.
Okay. But I mean, is that part of the strangulation process? Is that an independent trauma that the back of the neck was exposed to?
It could be a part of it's in the general region. So in other words, if I stretch my hands from the front all the way around the back, those vertebrae are in that general region, right? If you had a force wrap around the neck. But you also have hemorrhage that goes deeper into the upper back muscles. And then you have those rib fractures that continue on behind that. So it's likely that that also occurred from that large force upon the body.
It sounds to me like your earlier testimony that the cause of death, or primary cause of death, was not necessarily from the rib fractures or from the asphyxiation, but was related more to the damage to the neck in the back?
Well, not necessarily. You have multiple injuries here, all of which could cause death, right? So take everything else out. The rib fractures alone would prevent normal chest excursion, really limiting a person's ability to breathe normally, right? So that certainly could cause death.
Okay.
Sure.
Let me just stop you there.
Yeah, sure.
She couldn't breathe. She may not have been able to breathe normally, but she still might have been able to breathe.
But again, like I said, those injuries, if left unattended, you're asking me, that I only think that this could have caused death. No, there's other injuries that could have caused death. That's why I have my cause of death more generalized.
Okay. But once again, you can't tell me with any degree of scientific certainty that she was conscious at the time that she sustained any of these other injuries.
I could not know.
With regard to Ms. Melton, she didn't have the same injuries around her vertebrae, did she?
No.
She didn't have any broken bones?
No.
You mentioned that there was blunt force trauma, evidence of blunt force trauma to the head because there was hemorrhaging under the scalp.
That's correct.
But you couldn't see the hemorrhaging on the scalp itself, could you?
It's quite common that you don't know.
Okay. So, but I mean, I don't really understand. Well, that's what happens. I'm a lawyer, you're a doctor, so you explain these things to me. Somebody hits me on the arm, I get a bruise on my arm. All right, and that comes to the surface, and you can see that. How is it that you can get a contusion to your head where you can't see the bruising on the head, you can only see it underneath the scalp?
It's actually far more common than you think. Very common in injuries to the body. First of all, when you get a bruise or a contusion to the skin, it's because there's a rapid deformation or compression of the skin with a shear effect that causes a tearing of those capillaries in the skin. So it all really depends upon the level or surface at which that tearing occurs. If it occurs immediately beneath the skin, you're going to see bruising in the skin itself, right? Blows to the body. Very often you don't see bruises. Why? Because you don't have a bone immediately beneath the surface of the skin, so you're not compressing that skin rapidly against a structure causing tearing. So more common than not, you'll see nothing on the outside, but you'll see bruising on the inside to her internal organs, which we saw in this case. Now on the head, same thing. The head's a curved structure. If you have a glancing blow, you may not actually get a direct impact of the tissue causing rapid deformation and tearing of the vessels under the skin, but it may be more of a shear strain that causes the tearing of the blood vessels underneath the skin as scalp, skin, and fat move against each other like this. The blood vessels that course through there get torn. And that leads to bleeding in the tissues underneath. So very common, more common than you think. And as a matter of fact, it's very common for me to reflect the skin and see a greater bruise underneath the skin that I see on the outside of the skin.
Okay, well, and that brings us to a point, too. You see a greater bruise underneath the skin than you do on the surface of the skin, yet we would expect to see some bruising on the surface of the skin if it is blunt force trauma from, like, being hit with a hard, solid object.
Possible, but not necessarily.
Okay.
Much more common in younger persons to not see bruising. And that's classic throughout the pediatric literature.
All right, but you did say you saw hemorrhaging underneath the scalp, but you didn't see any fractures of any of the skull or anything like that?
No.
All right, so it wasn't trauma such that it would have cracked the skull?
No.
And we didn't have any, you already told us, she didn't have any injury directly to the vertebrae. There were no cracked vertebrae or anything like that?
No.
And no injuries to the spinal column?
Not that we were able to see, no.
The injury to the head, could it have been from the same or similar compression that you had in the neck area? It didn't necessarily have to be a blow. It could have just been compression.
No, it would have compression to the neck would cause hypoxia or lack of blood flow. And if the decedent was alive long enough, then sure, But more than likely, again, me seeing just a generalized swelling of the brain, something I very often see in concussive head trauma.
Okay. Once again, with Ms. Melton, you can't tell us with any degree of scientific certainty how long she was conscious at the time she expired.
I could not know.
I don't have further questions. Thank you, sir.
No further questions, Judge.
All right, you can step down.
Sure, thank you.
May I inquire?
You may.
Good morning.
Morning.
Please tell the jurors your name.
Shanna Williamson,
Ms. Williamson, where are you employed?
Benson and Associates Interior Design.
How long have you been employed with them?
10 years.
I want to show you State's Exhibit number 19. Do you recognize this exhibit?
Yes.
Does this exhibit show the interior design firm where you work?
Yes, our building is to the left, and we had a design library in the building on the right.
So if I'm pointing to where the silver car is this part of the building there?
Yes, that's our office.
And then this area to the right of that, is that the...
That's a separate rental.
Okay, so that's not yours?
The gray building on the right is the design library.
Over here?
Yes.
Okay. And which door is it?
It was the far right door. I'm not sure if you can see the
All
door
the
right
way
there.
over to behind the street somewhere?
Yes.
Okay. And are those still your offices today?
The building on the left is, yes, but the building on the right no longer is our office.
And you're still employed there?
Yes.
Can you tell us what exhibit number that is, please?
Sure, it's State's Exhibit 19.
Thank you.
I want to take you back to October 7th of 2019. Were you working on that day?
Yes.
What time did you get to work?
Probably 7:15, 7:30 a.m.
Now, did anything happen once you arrived to work?
I was in the office, and we had a design librarian at the time in the building to the right, and she was in there. She called us from the phone to the office on the other side, and she said, there's a commotion next door. Someone has hit one of my coworkers' cars. Looks like a fender bender, and there's an argument. You guys should lock the doors and not come out. And
Did you, so again, your coworker had to call because she's in the gray building and you're over in the other building?
Correct.
When she told you to lock the doors because of the commotion, did you lock the doors?
no.
What did you do?
I went outside. I thought there was some type of a fender bender, so I wanted to go out and get insurance information for my coworker.
What did you see when you got outside?
As I was walking out the building, the girls in the office were telling me not to go outside because they had seen someone hit our neighbor next door, Mila. So I ran out there, and as I turned the corner, Mila was up on the second level, and there was a man up there with her, kind of grabbing her by the throat, and they were having an altercation.
Okay. And you said Mila was your neighbor. Did you know her well?
No.
Just somebody that you knew in passing?
Right.
And what color was Mila's hair at the time?
Blonde.
So when you got outside, they were already upstairs on that second level?
Second level balcony.
Where were they at when you observed the man with his hand on her neck?
Second level balcony.
Okay, so were they, I'm just going to point to the picture here. Were they closer to the stairs or more over
They were
towards the law?
farther to the right on the second level.
And the man that you saw with his hand on her neck, could you describe what observations you made of him?
Tall, was not wearing a shirt, was being very aggressive with her.
Okay. And you say he's being aggressive. Could you just describe to the jurors what it was that you saw that caused you to determine he was acting aggressively?
Yeah, when I walked around the corner, I had heard the girls in the office say, "Oh my God, he hit her." And as I walked around, I could see him holding her up against the window, and she was screaming, saying, "Help, he's trying to kill me." And I saw that, immediately shouted, "Stop, let her go. What are you doing?" And he turned around and saw me, and I think it caused an interruption. She was able to get away.
So when he has his hand on her neck and she's yelling, "Help, he's trying to kill me," what type of voice was she yelling in?
Screaming.
Did she seem terrified?
Yeah, very scared.
And when you yelled at him, describe what he did.
He turned around and he was in a way defending himself. I believe he said, "She hit me first," or I know he was trying to kind of defend his actions, basically.
So when you yelled at him, did it cause him then to turn around and engage with you?
Right.
Once he engaged with you, was she able to get away?
Yeah, so I was saying, "Run, like, come, run." So she was able to run down the hallway, down the stairs, and my coworkers were in the building at the time. The door you can see on the left there, they unlocked that door, and we both went inside that door and locked it.
And the door that you're talking about, is it the one by the car?
Correct.
So you told her to run, she was able to run in, and then you locked the door?
Right.
And did you keep it locked until law enforcement came?
We did.
Did you ever see the man that was strangling her again at that moment?
No, we did not see him again.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
You may.
At this time, the state tenders a witness.
Okay.
And from your angle, how close did you get to the two of them?
I was standing probably about where that silver car was, a little bit to the right, maybe.
The one on the left of the photo?
Correct.
And where were they?
They were on the second level balcony.
In the building in the back?
The building in the back.
Did you ever see him hit her?
I did not. I don't recall seeing him hit her.
Okay. Thank you.
I have nothing further, Your Honor, and ask that she be excused.
All right, you can step down. Any objection for being excused?
Objection.
You're excused. All right, sir. You'll just face the clerk, raise your right hand. She'll swear you in.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
All right, you take a seat. You may proceed.
Good morning, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Please introduce yourself to ladies and gentlemen of the jury by telling them your name.
My name's Timothy McCormick. I was a police officer at City of Fort Myers.
How long were you an officer with City of Fort Myers?
Just over 15 years.
Back in October of 2019, were you a police officer at that time?
Yes, I was.
And how long had you been working as a police officer at that time?
Just under 13 years, I believe.
And what were you doing? What were your duties and roles as the police officer back in 2019?
At that time, I was a senior patrol officer, and I was on Alpha Shift and assigned to patrol.
What's a senior patrol officer do, sir?
Basically, we respond to calls for service, assist the public in any way, shape, or form, and protect and serve the city of Fort Myers.
When you say alpha shift, what do you mean?
That's the assigned shift. Shifts are broken into 12-hour periods, and I was on the Alpha Shift from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Now, specifically directing your attention to the 7th of October of 2019, were you working on that day?
Yes, I was.
Did you have occasion to become involved in an investigation involving a battery that occurred at a spa known as Mila's Spa, involving a young lady by the name of Melissa Montanez?
Yes, I did.
And what was the extent of your involvement in that particular case?
I was called to the scene of a reported battery on West 1st Street in front of the Mila Spa. Upon arrival with other officers, we made contact with the victim.
And was the investigation ultimately turned over to an officer to conduct that?
That's correct.
Okay. And what did you do in response to turning that investigation over to that officer?
I turned the investigation over to the officer, and I patrolled the area to see if the identified subject would possibly still be in the area.
And were you able to locate him?
Not at the initial time, no.
At what time were you able to locate him?
I was contacted by an acquaintance and said that...
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
Did you receive information with regards to the whereabouts of an individual who later became known to you as Mr. Wade Wilson?
Yes, I did.
And when you received that information, what did you do in response?
I responded to the area and looked for the described vehicle and the person that I had identified as Wade Wilson by his driver's license photo and the photo in the LCSO records.
And when you say you went to a specific location, which location was that?
It was Joe's Crab Shack on West 1st Street.
And when you made contact with that individual at Joe's Crab Shack, were you also wearing a body cam?
Yes, I was.
What exactly is a body cam?
A body-worn camera is a camera that all police officers issue, and the standard policy at Fort Myers Police Department, as most police departments, is that as soon as you as soon as you get the call, you activate your body camera. Also, in our cars, we have an automatic system where if you turn on the overhead lights, it automatically starts your body camera.
And were you wearing a body camera on that particular date and time?
Yes, I was.
Judge, let the record reflect on Mr. Martin, cases number 34 and 35.
Is it 34 and 35?
Yes, Your Honor. May I approach?
You may.
McCormick, I'm showing you some precinct marked case number 34. I ask you to take a look at that item. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And what does that appear to be?
That appears to be the parking lot of Joe's Crab Shack.
Okay. Does that photograph fairly accurately depict the parking lot there at Joe's Crab Shack?
Yes, it does.
And I'm also handing you this precinct marked case number 35. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
How do you recognize that?
This is the recording of my body cam.
Okay. And does that body cam fairly accurately depict your interaction with Mr. Wilson on the 7th of October of 2019?
Yes, by my initials it does. You showed it to me in your office and I initialed it.
Okay. And it's essentially the same summer conditions when you last saw it?
Yes.
Judge, statement moves cases number 34 and 35 in evidence at this time.
Objection. You admitted.
Permission to publish, Judge?
You may.
So we're looking here at State's Exhibit number 34. That is, in fact, the parking lot there of Joe's Crab Shack.
That is.
Where in relationship to Mila Spa is Joe's Crab Shack?
It's... If you're sitting in the parking lot of Joe's Crab Shack as it's depicted, and your car was backed into a spot, say next to the white car right there, if you look to your left across the street is where Mila's spot would be.
Now, when you made contact with Mr. Wilson, could you please describe what his demeanor was like?
He was... He seemed nervous, and when I spoke to him, he seemed a little defensive and uncooperative.
Did you know anything he was wearing at the time?
He was shirtless, and I remember he was wearing a pair of pants that seemed to didn't fit him at the time.
And do you see the person that you made contact with there at Joe's Crab Shack in the courtroom here today?
Yes, I do.
Would you please point him out and describe the article of clothing that he's wearing?
He's sitting to my right, and he's wearing a suit with a black tie.
Judge, let the record reflect the witnesses identify the defendant as well.
Okay.
Permission to publish the video, Judge?
You may.
way now. Okay. Okay. L41 divided by ETA. Copy, I'm 1012. I'll explain it to you when my partner gets here, okay? Yeah. How about this morning? Say again. Yeah, I can do that, but I'm just waiting for my partner to get here. Yeah, absolutely. And here's what's going to happen. Is the car running? Shut the car off for me. It's off. I'm going to detain you until I figure out what exactly is going on. Wait, you don't want any trouble for me, okay? Okay, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I'm going to have you step out of the car, and I'm going to detain you. Not arrest. Detain you right now, okay? And I can't have any problems. You understand me? All right. What's that? Like 5, I'm at Joe's Crab Shack in the parking lot. I will. I give you my word. No. I have to detain you. By our procedures, I have to detain you. Because of the battery this morning. There wasn't any battery? Okay. I will. No. Just relax. Let me see the keys to the car. Let me see the keys to the car. Keys. Keys. Wait, we're not going to have any problems. Just give me the keys to the car. Wait. Just wait till my partner gets here. Now, 4-1. Give me a couple more minutes. Don't go anywhere. Hey. Don't do it. He's in his car, attempting to take off. Back up. Yes, please. He's taking off, Fort Myers. Just ran a stop sign, going up towards McGregor.
Ms. McCormick, when you made contact with Mr. Wilson, did he appear to understand everything that you were telling him?
Yes.
And was he responding in kind to you?
He was basically denying everything that I was asking him to do.
When you were having a conversation with him, you were giving him certain commands and you were asking questions of him. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And was he responding appropriately? By appropriately, I mean, if one asks you if you had breakfast this morning and one would respond, yes, I had cereal, that would be an example of appropriate response. Was he responding to you appropriately?
Not complying to my commands, but yes, he was responding appropriately.
And when you told him specifically about a battery that occurred that morning, what was his response to you?
That there was no battery.
Okay. And he continued to deny that.
That's correct.
And when you advised him that you were going to detain him, he opted to leave the scene as an alternative choice to what you were telling him. Is that right?
Ultimately, yes. That was the outcome.
Okay. Was there anything else in that video that we were not able to understand that you recall, specifically that Mr. Wilson had told you?
Not that I recall.
Did you follow, or did you continue to follow him?
I did for a short period of time.
Okay. Why did you stop?
Because of the time of day and the amount of traffic on the road. It was around lunchtime. It's somewhere there near lunchtime, and the amount of people on the road. At the time, I only had a non-pursuitable offense.
What does that mean?
I only had misdemeanor battery at the time.
Yes, sir.
So therefore, there was no probable cause to continue any type of pursuit or have any other officers try to locate him at the time because of the nature of the offense we were dealing with.
And would that have been the protocol of your office?
Yes, that is.
Okay. Fair enough.
Life and safety of the community comes first.
Thank you. No further questions, Mr. Administration.
Any questions?
No problem.
All right. You can step down.
Thank you, sir.
May I inquire, Your Honor?
You may.
Good morning. Please state your name for the record.
Fanny Amlin,
Ms. Amlin, where do you currently live?
Columbus, Ohio.
Did you have a house here in Cape Coral back on October 7th of 2019?
I did, and I still do.
Okay. What is the address of that home?
2227 Northeast First Terrace, Cape Coral.
Were you at that house on October 7th, 2019?
Yes.
Did you leave the house at any point?
Yes.
Could you just tell the jurors where you left to go?
We left to go to the airport, to go back to Columbus.
What time about did you leave your home?
It was early morning, maybe 8:30. Early, I'm not sure.
When you left your house, was everything picked up and in its place?
Yes.
And were the doors locked?
Yes.
And did you plan on having any guests or company staying at your house?
No.
At some time, did you receive a call from detectives once you had gotten to Ohio?
Yes.
And did you learn that someone had broken into your home?
We did, yes.
And again, had you given any permission for someone to come to your home? And did you know the person that they found in your home?
No.
Had you ever spoken to Wade Wilson?
No.
Had you ever seen Wade Wilson?
No.
When he was arrested, he had told detectives he had taken some things from your home. Did you ever give permission for him to take anything
No.
from your home? Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
For the record, I'm showing defense counsel states exhibits 36, 37, 37A, 37B as in boy, 37C, 37D as in dog, 37E, 37F, 37G as in girl, 37H, and 37I. Ms. Amlin, I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 36. Do you recognize this exhibit?
Yes.
What does this exhibit show?
That's our house.
That's the house that you owned back in 2019 and the house you still currently own?
Right.
Then I'm going to show you the photographs. If you could just take a look and tell me if you recognize these photographs.
I can't tell what that is.
Just put it in for a second. Goes with these three.
Oh, okay, yes. Yes.
All right. Look at those.
This is our kitchen.
Okay, just take a look and tell me. And I'll
Guys, we can't.
Yeah, I can't hear what you're saying, so you need to speak
Oh,
up. No, not you, ma'am. I'm talking to the attorney.
Yeah, just look through them and I'll ask you some questions about them
Okay.
later.
Okay.
Do you recognize these photographs?
Yes.
And do they fairly and accurately represent your home?
Yes.
This time the state would move exhibits number 36 and 37 and then 37A through I into evidence.
Any objections?
No objection.
All right, be admitted.
All right, Ms. Amlin, is that your home?
Yes.
We identified the exhibit.
36?
Thank you.
Then I'm going to start with 37. Is this a window to your home?
Yes.
Now, it appears that there's a pane of glass or some screen that's been removed. Was that removed prior to you leaving for Ohio?
No.
Okay, so there was a screen and glass there when you
Yes.
left. Now, I'm showing you 37B. The screen and glass, is that the screen and glass that was part of that window?
Yes.
And were those actually broken?
Yes.
And did they need to be repaired?
Completely.
And how much did the repair cost approximately?
We think about $250. We bought a new window and put it in ourselves.
Okay, so around $250 for that. Then going to the inside of your home, actually I'll stay on the outside, 37A, we see the window and the screen behind that structure. Again, were those there when you left for Ohio?
No.
Going now to the inside of your home, 37C. Do you recognize that backpack or anything on the counter or the stool?
The backpack, yes.
Okay, and whose backpack is that?
It's ours.
Okay, and was that backpack left on the chair before you left? Where was the backpack located?
In the bedroom.
And then what about this, looks like actually pants and shirt and belt that are sitting on the counter?
Those are probably my husband's.
And did your husband leave the belt or shorts or shirt on your kitchen counter?
No.
And if he had, you would have put them away?
Right. We don't do that.
Then looking at 37D, that's just a close-up of a hat and backpack. Do you recognize that orange hat?
Not the orange hat.
Okay, but the backpack.
The black
you mentioned.
backpack, yes.
Now, looking at 37E, that's just the clothing that was set on top of your kitchen counter. Is that clothing, does that belong to your husband?
Not those two, no.
And so you don't recognize those or know where they would have come from?
No.
But again, they weren't there when you left?
No.
Looking at 37F, do you recognize that belt?
Honestly, no. I don't pay too much attention to belts.
All right. And when we look back at, actually, I'm going to just go on to the next one. 37G, did you leave your cupboards open?
No.
37H, it appears there's some White Claw empty cans and some, like a plastic Solo cup. Did you leave those empty cans in your cupboard there?
No.
And did you ever keep White Claw cans in your cupboard in that area?
No.
Then 37I, there are 5 empty cans of White Claw. Are those alcoholic beverages?
Yes.
It's like a seltzer?
Yes.
And did you and your husband have some drinks before you got on the airplane?
No.
Okay.
Those are in the
And so were those White Claws left out empty when you left?
No.
So all these were are different from how you left.
Yes. Those were all full and in the refrigerator.
And about how much does White Claw cost?
I think about $15. It did then, probably more now.
Now, did you end up, both you and your husband, give a statement to law enforcement?
When?
Did you just tell them about what happened when they contacted you or that you didn't give him permission?
Oh, yes, I did. I was the only one up.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
You may.
Nothing further. The state tenders a witness.
All right.
No cross-examination.
All right. You may sit down.
The state calls Stephen Testaseca. I ask that she be excused from her subpoena.
Any objections?
No objection.
Be released. All right, sir, if you'll just face the clerk, raise your right hand. She'll swear you in.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
You can take a stand. You may proceed.
Good morning. Please state your name for the record.
Stephen Testaseca.
Mr. Testaseca, where are you employed?
I'm self-employed.
What type of work do you do?
Window and door replacement?
Are you married?
Yes, ma'am.
What is your wife's name?
Melanie?
Do you live in Fort Myers?
No, ma'am.
What city do you live in?
Lakeland?
About how far is Lakeland from Fort Myers?
2 hours.
How old are you, sir?
46.
You know someone by the name of Wade Wilson?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you know Wade Wilson?
He's my son.
How old were you when you found out you were going to be his father?
14 or 15.
How old was his mother at the time?
A year younger than me.
Now, were either of you in a position at that age to be able to raise him?
No, ma'am.
Was he placed up for adoption?
Yes, ma'am.
Who was he adopted by?
Candy and Steve Wilson.
And did they have any connection to you or Wade Wilson's mother?
You mean?
Like how did they? How were they known?
They went to church with Wade's mother's parents.
So that was how they connected and ended up raising Wade Wilson?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, do they have any other children?
Yes, ma'am. 2 daughters.
And have you spoken with them on numerous occasions?
I've spoken with Candy.
And that's his adoptive mom?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, at some point, did you and Wade Wilson connect?
Yes, ma'am.
How old was Wade Wilson when he connected with you?
18.
And was he wanting to connect with you because you were his biological father?
Yes.
And up until that point, had you ever met him?
No, ma'am.
Did you end up attempting to have a relationship with him?
Yes, ma'am.
Did he seem to want to have a relationship?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, did you have phone calls often?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you have occasions where you would see each other?
No. I went up and visited him one time in Tallahassee.
Okay. Now, did he often ask you for money?
Yes, ma'am.
Did your relationship turn into a situation where he was just asking for your help?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to turn your attention to Monday, October 7th of 2019. Did Wade Wilson get in touch with you through phone call that day?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was it that he told you when he called?
The first time he said he needed help. He had done something that he couldn't take back.
Did he indicate that he and his girl had gotten into an argument?
Yes, ma'am.
And who was his girl that you were aware of at the time?
I just knew her as Mila.
And did it seem that he wanted your help because of this argument?
Yes, ma'am.
When he called you, were you actually at work?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you able to really give your attention and time to him to try to help him at that point?
No, ma'am.
So what did you tell him when he was asking for your help?
I just told him to call me back around dinner time. I'd be done working and we'd figure it out.
And did you at some point have a conversation with your wife about him getting in touch with you wanting your help?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, during the time that he was supposed to call, about what time was he supposed to call back?
I told him around dinner time.
Now, between the time he first called that day and dinner time, did you receive a call from a detective?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that detective looking for your son?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, when the detective was looking for your son, did you have any idea at that point of what had happened?
No, ma'am.
Did the detective want you to try to help them get in touch with your son?
She just gave me a number and said if he calls you back, we need to talk to him.
Okay. Now, did he end up calling you later that evening?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did he tell you in that call that evening?
The final call?
Nope, the call before the final call.
He just told me, he did something. There was 2 people gone that would not be back. He said, I'm a killer. I just told him to call me back. I just thought it was another story,
So at this point, when he says that there were 2 people that wouldn't be with us and that he was a killer, did you put a lot of weight into that?
No, ma'am.
Did you think he was just telling you a story?
He's a good storyteller.
So did he then call you back a third time?
Yes, ma'am.
What time did he call you back?
It was around 10 o'clock.
I'm going to go back to that dinner time call. When he talked about these 2 people who were no longer with us and that he was a killer, did he show any type of remorse?
No, ma'am.
So let's go now to the 10 o'clock call. Again, your wife knew about kind of what was going on during that day.
Yes, ma'am.
And when he called back at 10, did he go into more details about what he had told you earlier?
Yes, ma'am.
So let's start with the first girl. If you could tell the jurors, what did he tell you?
He just said he met a girl at a bar. They went back to her house, hung out for a little bit, and then she fell asleep.
What did he say happened after she fell asleep?
He said he got on top of her and choked her.
What name did he call her? Did he refer to her in a derogatory term?
He said, I choked that bitch.
Okay. And what did he say he did after he choked her?
He said he stayed in the house for a little while, and then he rolled her up and was going to try to put her in her trunk, but he couldn't lift her.
Did he say why he was unable to put her in her trunk?
He said that he felt like rigor mortis had started.
Rigor mortis make your body stiff? You didn't know?
I think so. Yeah.
So he just told you that was the reason that he couldn't lift her and get her into her trunk?
Yes, ma'am.
And when he said her trunk, it was the trunk of her car he was going to put her in?
Yes, ma'am.
So what did he tell you he did when he couldn't get her body into her own trunk?
He left her there and took her car.
What did he say about the second girl?
He said he saw her walking down the street and stopped and asked her for directions. And she got in the car with him.
What did he say happened once she got in the car with him?
He said he reached over and choked her.
And did he tell you that he choked her while he was driving?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, what did he say happened after he choked her?
He said he was looking for a place to put her body.
Did he find a place where he eventually dumped her body?
Yes, ma'am.
What did he tell you about the situation when he got to the place where he was going to dump her body?
He said that he pulled her out of the car and realized that she was still breathing.
So what did he tell you he did when he realized she's still breathing?
He said he got back in the car and ran her over until she looked like spaghetti.
As he's telling you all these things, what's his demeanor as he's telling you?
He was excited.
When you say excited, what do you mean by that?
I felt like he was wanting me to feel the way he felt about it.
Did he seem proud of it?
Yes.
Did he seem to show any kind of remorse?
No, ma'am.
And was he able to go into great detail about both of these ladies' deaths?
Yes, ma'am.
The second girl that he killed and left in this lot, did he think that she would be found?
No, ma'am.
He seemed to think he did a good job hiding her body.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, the whole time that he's telling you these details, is your wife hearing any of these details?
I had the phone on speakerphone.
Now, prior to him telling you these details, how did you feel about turning him in to law enforcement?
I initially wanted to help him.
Did you feel conflicted about giving him over to law enforcement initially?
Yes, ma'am.
At some point when you're talking with him, did that feeling change?
Yes, ma'am.
Why?
I just thought, what if that was my mom or my daughter or sister or wife? I wouldn't want somebody to do that.
And did you have additional concerns of what might happen if you didn't turn him into law enforcement?
Yes, ma'am.
What was that, sir?
He would have done it again.
Now, after he's telling you all these details, do you know where he's at when he's telling you these things?
I just knew he was in a house that he broke into when he was running from the police.
Did you know the actual address of this house he broke into?
No, ma'am.
Now, when you were talking to him and you decided that you needed to give the information to law enforcement about his whereabouts, how did you get that address from him?
I told him I was going to send him an Uber, and I needed the address of where he was.
Were you actually going to send him an Uber?
No, ma'am.
And so when you told him that you were going to send him an Uber, did he give you that address?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you then do with the address he gave you?
My wife was messaging with the officer.
Now, is your wife messaging with the officer during the course of these details that he's telling you?
The last part of them.
And so she's relaying what your son's telling you to law enforcement,
Yes, ma'am.
giving them further details.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, again, this conversation you're having with your son is on October 7th, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
It's in the evening hours?
Yes,
And was it your understanding that the bar, him going to the bar and meeting the first woman happened the night before?
Yes, ma'am.
So at this point, when he's giving you all this information and you're giving this information to law enforcement, had the second girl's body been found?
No, ma'am.
Did it strike that? Now, that address you said your wife then gave to law enforcement.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you remain on the phone with your son?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you on the phone with him when law enforcement showed up at that house?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you encourage him to go outside and turn himself in?
I did. I didn't want him to do anything stupid and end up getting killed. So I just told him to put his hands up and just go outside.
I have nothing further in front of this witness. Oh, I'm sorry, Your Honor. I do have one more.
Okay.
Do you see your son sitting here in the courtroom?
Yes, ma'am.
And would you describe an article of clothing he's wearing?
Dark suit.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that the witness is identified. Actually, if you could just give it a little bit more description, since there's other people.
White shirt, blue tie, dark suit.
All right, Your Honor, this time I'll let the record reflect that the witness is identified.
Okay. Any questions?
Just briefly, sir. When you were on the phone,
Yes, sir.
he told you he was hiding out from the police in that house.
Yes, sir.
How often had you spoken with him before?
It was sporadic. One month it may be every other day, and I may not hear from him until he needs me again. 6 months, 2 months, whatever. It varied.
All right. Nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nothing further. I'd ask that you be excused from his subpoena.
Any objections?
No objection.
All right, you can step down and you're excused.